First things first, what we're talking about today is not to learn about OZs. So if you're here because you have questions about how to navigate the opportunity zone strategy you have, you can certainly come on to other sessions that we've got available or go on YouTube and find out. You can drop a question in the chat. I can't guarantee that it will get answered, but we are here to talk about how to get access to OZ Capital and what that looks like for you. So odds are you've heard about OZs. That's why you're here. Someone suggested you attend. That's great. We will talk about that more, but for purposes of this conversation, it's all about the deal flow. We have 3 million in private OZ capital for you. 2 million of that is for specifically earmarked for projects in Puerto Rico that we've had an incredible connection point to the island. And part of our goal is to make sure that capital starts to and is flowing into OZs the way that the incentive was intended. We're going to get into a little bit of that maybe today, maybe later, but all of the conversation today is going to be around how you get access to this capital that has been so graciously offered by to investors that are part of our network. So I'm going to get into why we did this. I'm also going to talk to, and we're going to talk to a couple of people who are involved, but let's keep rolling. Who am I? What's my story? I'm going to go down through this briefly, but I was a builder of collaborative physical workspaces for over 10 years. Those are co-working spaces, incubators, accelerators. We worked on these projects, on the mainland US and internationally. And that's how I found out about opportunity zones. I was actually consulting on a project just outside of Atlanta that happened to fall in an OZ. And the client that I had called me one night and said, why is the value of this building that we're working on 5x because of this incentive? And so that's how I started down this path. Formed my own fund with Ashley Tyson of OZ Pros, who some of you may know, and Jimmy Atkinson, who's the voice of the Opportunity Zones podcast, when they called me and asked to help put together a collaborative space online for this OZ thing that I had heard about a year before. And when we talked about setting up this community, I said, well, let's practice what we preach. And if we're going to teach people how to set up QOZBs, which are qualified opportunity zone businesses, then we should start our own, right? And so we launched OZworks Group. We raised the capital. It wasn't a huge raise, which we will get into as part of the accelerator, like why the OZ can be so beneficial to investors. But we launched OZworks Group in January 2020 as a QOZB with our own capital gains, our own fund. We've run advocacy campaigns. We have a lot of contact points in Capitol Hill. We are going to have to figure out how things may change based on yesterday through today, but this is a bipartisan incentive, so it's here at least for the duration of the timeline that it's been enacted. We've recorded thousands of hours of strategies, consulting calls, sessions with our group members, and we've established this national community, not just of OZ industry experts and leaders and service providers, but also enthusiasts like you who are launching projects and deals. So that leads me to this slide. This is really neat. I looked at this. This was part of the original pitch deck for OZworks Group. And I don't expect you to read through all this. I just wanted to segment the actual slide. We're at phase 3 now. And this was all part of a vision to initially democratize access to opportunity zone education and knowledge across the country. And we've done phases 1 and 2. 1 was to launch the network. 2 was to provide scholarships and educate people in communities about opportunity zones. We didn't get any grants and we haven't done any subsidies. We've done everything through privately funded channels. And now we're here at this 3rd phase. And this was 2 years ago. The date was November 24th, 2020. And this was part of the fulfillment of the OZ incentive that for many reasons I can get into at a later date, I feel very personally driven by and connected to. So I wanted to show that because this has been in the works for 2 years, and I'm really excited about where we've come and how we're able to work on phase 3, which is the actual deal flow. connecting people who normally wouldn't have access to investors, and investors who normally wouldn't have connection to these projects to the deals. There's a formula for all this, right? There's a formula for Opportunity Zone funding and for funding in general. And we're going to be able to present all of these pieces of the formula through our accelerator. It's learning the content and getting educated about the language, it's building the relationships between investor and issuer, and ultimately that's how capital gets distributed. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges. There have been many. These are some from a founder and issuer standpoint, people who are raising money. I have a feeling that a lot of you can commiserate with me on this. One is, what's the language of OZs? Like, what do we have to know to talk and about opportunity zones and be connected to each other from an investor and issuer standpoint? The other thing is, maybe it's been hard to get in the right rooms, to get in front of investors. That's a big deal. And Sue, we were just talking before we got on this call that, you know, you said you can't wait for the day when you don't have to raise money anymore, but being in those rooms is how you raise money. So we're creating those spaces, and I'll talk about that in a second. The other is guidance and feedback. I mean, how many of you have heard no, or it just isn't a good deal for us without any reason for it? So these are definitely some of the challenges that we're going to talk about solving through this accelerator. What are the results? I mean, this builds up to something that is one of the major issues or sort of objections of the OZ incentive in general, and some of it's justified, right? If you have people who are dejected, their deals are not going to mature. They might just stop altogether, and ultimately that capital flow that is touted as part of the reason that the incentive exists is not going to happen. So the funding isn't actually going to go into opportunity zones. We have created this thing in order to build solutions, this thing being the accelerator. So the barrier, the opportunity zone knowledge and language, through the accelerator, we're going to provide access to the experts. These are people who know and are in opportunity zone land. They aren't just in opportunity zone land, something that I want everybody to know. It's like the OZ is going to be a component of this accelerator. It's not the whole thing. And so through those trainings and expert modules that I'll show you here in a second, we are going to be able to speak the same language. And I'll tell you, I just heard about a sort of nightmare story with an investor, an OZ investor who invested in a business that was audited. And in that conversation, when the investor talked to the business and said, "Where's all of our compliance?" that person said, "What do you mean the compliance?" This is a major issue, or can be a major issue. So we want to build that dialogue. The access points, investors and founders getting in the same rooms. There's a lot of different accelerators out there, and I know DJ's here, and I'm going to have him talk in a second about some of the things that he's seen as the challenges and some of the pitfalls of these accelerators. But a lot of it is that the investors and the founders aren't in a room to be able to build relationships. I know, Sean, you mentioned going to an accelerator, and when I asked you, you said, "Yeah, I got connected to people." I said, "How'd you connect to them?" And you said, "I went up and introduced myself." There wasn't a facilitated environment for that to happen throughout the process. It was you making that initiative. So we're going to make that initiative here. And then active and static listings. So there's a lot of platforms out there where you can list your deals. There's very few that give you an opportunity to interact between the investor, and they're participating the whole time, giving you feedback, peer support. So you can constantly be refining and hearing about the reasons, so you don't get those no's without any backing. So who's behind it? OZworks Group. We are the entity that is funding the platform that we're using. We did a pilot for the platform a year ago. It was really successful. The platform is called CrowdSmart. You can look it up. It is also incredibly valuable. The starting license cost for this is $5,000 a month. They have graciously offered us a discount because we align in mission, but we are still covering the cost of that. And we've got 2 investors right now that are covering some scholarships. We're going to talk about that as a way in. The Accelerator. This is a 3-month online program. It's going to start in January. It's going to enhance and elevate your deals, increase capital flow to OZ communities, connect you with experts, founders, service providers, instructors, you name it. Everyone in the ecosystem is going to be a part of this throughout the entire duration of the 12-week program. So how do you get to pitch, right? This is in essence a filter. It's a way to prove yourself, but also get that feedback that you need to be able to give yourself the best chance. So there's a couple of ways we're gonna announce the scholarship initiative here in a second, and how you get apply for that. You can pay to get into the Accelerator if you don't want to get a scholarship, or you don't end up getting one. There's other ways in. You in the program, you're going to be part of this CrowdSmart technology platform that I mentioned, and that builds a score. It's crowd-based, it's interactive. We will walk through all of that once we kick off the platform, the program, and those scores will be updated throughout the course of the 12-week program. The people who score the highest will get invited to pitch at the end of March, at the end of the program. And we'll do a little Q&A at the end of this as well. So I'm showing this slide, not expecting that everyone's going to be able to read it in the 10 seconds that I'm going to show it, but I want to show that this is a really, really in-depth set of courses that's going to be launched. There are components of it that are OZ. It's not all OZ. And these will be on a weekly basis, happening on a weekly basis, taught by a different instructor each week. So you will also get to interact with other people in the industry that can be a resource for you. So I'm going to show that really quickly, and it's meant to be somewhat intimidating because this may not be for everyone. If you're like, you know what, I don't really feel like going through this, then that's okay. The funding route is maybe not for you. So I'm just showing this quickly. This will all be part of more materials that we put out in the coming weeks. But it's going to be intense. It's going to be a sprint, and it's also going to be really valuable. So 3 ways to get in: scholarship application, and we'll share some QR codes, and Emily's going to put some links in the chat here in a minute. You can receive a scholarship. There's some forms to fill out. There is an application process. We'll be talking with the investors about how to get into this. There will also be some participatory requirements for the next couple weeks, but we can answer any questions that people have about that. You can also become an annual base member. So we wanted to keep this cost down. I mentioned that OZworks Group is the source of funding that's backing all of the logistics and operational costs behind this thing. So we do want to make sure that we're able to put something together that has legs and is sustainable. But we do want to keep the cost accessible and down. So that's one option is to become a base member of OZworks Group, and included in that, you get all the resources for the membership platform as well. And the other is that if you don't want to do any of that stuff and you just say, I want to dive right into the 12-week course, we will have that available as an option as well. So those are the 3. Who are these for? Who are these options for? It's not, it's not necessarily like exact, but this is in general who we believe will fit these different tracks. So if you're new to OZs, but you represent an OZ community, you put some of your money into your deal, into your project, a little bit of experience with investors and talking to investors, but if you're on a tight budget, that's one option for the scholarship initiative. The base membership, it's like, hey, you know what, I kind of know what OZs are. I'm really interested in what OZs are. The membership gives you more working knowledge and more access to additional resources. That's why we lumped all these in together. It's for people who are OZ in OZs, representing OZs, and maybe OZ adjacent. So you might represent a deal that is in an opportunity zone, but you aren't particularly in one. This is also designed for people who have a little bit of experience with investors and receiving investment. Sue mentioned that, she's gone through the process. And so this is a little bit more than beginner mode or idea or concept mode. We want to present deals that are ready to receive funding at the end of this for the Seans of the world. And have, obviously there is a little bit of a cost to this. And at the end, this is more like maybe you are a master of OZs already and you don't feel like you need to participate in or get the access to the OZ community that we have built. And you have experience raising money and you want to just get into the accelerator. There's nothing wrong with that. We want to make that an option for people, maybe people who have a little bit of a bigger budget. So these are options. And then there's a timeline to this, right? I just said we're kicking off in January. We'll have scholarships available through the end of this month. So if you want to apply for that, get on it. Once those scholarships are approved, we'll announce them around the first week of December. And then we will be structuring this so that those people get into OZworks group and start to participate in a little bit of a warm up that we will be monitoring. January 4th, we'll be kicking things off, and the 10th is the first day of the actual accelerator, and that will be ongoing on a weekly basis. So it's going to be fast, it's going to be furious, it's going to be amazing. I'm really excited about it. And like I said, this is sort of the third phase of the mission that we set out to achieve 2 years ago. So I guess it's like that overnight success, 15 years in the making, I think, as Ray Kroc famously said with McDonald's. But we have access points right now for everybody. I really appreciate everyone being here. I also want to put out a huge thank you to the OZworks group community. Everyone who's participated in that over the last 2 years has really motivated and inspired all of what we're talking about today. And without them, without you, this really is not happening, and it's not a possibility. We've had feedback. We did our pilot last year. We didn't have capital attached to the pilot. The people who went through it and participated in CrowdSmart, which perfected our system that we're going to launch here. It was amazing how to see the projects evolve, and so I'm incredibly grateful and share all that gratitude with this amazing community for really motivating us to keep going and providing the feedback and input that we needed to make this happen. So that's, let's see, I said we may not need the whole hour. That's 45 minutes, pretty good. So these QR codes are available. We wanted to do that on Zoom. So if you have your phone, you can just pop that on the camera and scan whichever layer you might want to come in at. If you have questions, you can certainly, I'm going to leave some space open right now. We'll have some materials and a landing page where we'll talk a bit more about like who's going to be teaching the courses. That'll be rolling out in the next few weeks. And when those modules are going to be launched and on a whole schedule. So yeah, are there any questions in the chat? I see. Thank you, Emily, for putting the links in there. I'm just going to leave up the QR codes here for a second. Questions, comments,